Okay, so for all of you in the audience, if you have not yet become a member of the a member of the AUA, you can join for free. So please take this opportunity to join the AUA. You do have free resources through the medical student webpage, but if you become a member, you can access the core curriculum and all of the other great opportunities of the AUA. And again, it's free, so please join. Another thing that I wanted to highlight is the curriculum app, so the medical student curriculum app. This is a great app that you can have on your phone. You may have seen when you entered all of the applications through the AUA. Again, if you're a member, you can access these. So please download it, and it has some great case scenarios and some good information. Okay, and then we also have YouTube selections for your listening enjoyment. So you can listen to our webinars, and you can also hear all of the great advice from our Medical Student Education Committee. So we're going to get started, and oh, I forgot to mention, we need to make sure that you download the Up Squad, because that's a great application and a way for you to network. We're going to get started with some questions for our panelists. So let's get started talking about some medical student clerkships. So the first question, and I'm going to ask Dr. Traxel to start out, how can I get the most out of my fourth year clinical rotation?
All right, thanks everyone for being here. Continue. So as the expression goes, chance favors the prepared mind. And so you need to show up prepared. First of all, the preparation even before the rotation begins, but then every single day showing up prepared. In that way, you will get the most out of that rotation, not only in terms of your actual adding to your foundational urologic knowledge, but also already beginning the networking within your institution. Although honestly, I figure most people have probably already begun doing that even before their sub-internship begins. But showing up prepared every single day, looking in advance to see who am I working with the next day, what surgeries am I going to be in, and reading up on those in advance. Also, tap into the resident network at your institution. They are a tremendous resource, and they were in your shoes not too long ago, and they usually know the quirks of the attendings with whom you'll be working, and they can give you some helpful tips and tricks.
Great advice. And from our resident cohort, Dr. Reddy, do you have any perspectives?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we have some Baylor Med students in the crowd, but I tell all the students, the residents are an invaluable resource. We work with the attendings really on an everyday basis, so we know what every attending prefers and the pathways for their patients. And I think just showing up and having a positive attitude goes a long way. I'll say this right now, the 3 A's that I always tell my med students is availability, affability, and ability, and I think it goes in that order. We don't care about the ability aspect that comes with residency, but if someone's there eager to learn and has a good attitude, I think that goes a long way.
Great, thank you. And Dr. Siddiqui, what urology study resources would you recommend to our rotators?
Yeah, a couple that I used to use too is the urology handbook, Weeders. I think it's still a thing. I know they updated recently. They have really good information. So, when you prepare for a clinic or the OR, it's a very valuable resource. And obviously, the AUA medical student curriculum is actually really good as well. We, our committee typically updates, goes through the stuff and updates it, as well as we add new things as well. So I think if you can just read Weeder and then our curriculum stuff, I think you'll be more than ready at your level to just shine.
And remember, you can become a member of the AUA for free and access the online curriculum, the core curriculum, and all of the apps. So that would be a great resource. Okay, moving on. Dr. Yates, what are best practices for a strong sub-I performance?
Thank you, Dr. Clifton. I think this nicely segues from how do I get the most out of my fourth year. So now you're a little more acuity here because you're hoping to do urology and match into urology. So you're trying to not only learn as much as you can, but this is also performance-based. So fourth year clinical rotation and performance learning, and also showing the folks that you're working with that you have what they're looking for in a resident. So I think we talked a little bit about using your residents as your best asset to kind of get a lay of the land and determine where you're going to be, who you're going to be with, and how to be successful, because each department or division is quite different. So what may be a successful tactic in one department, you may want to change that a little bit as far as how you liaison or interact in a different, if you're doing an away rotation especially. So I think cannot overestimate the importance of preparing. I'm always very impressed when a medical student comes into the operating room and knows not only about the surgery, knows what surgery we're doing, but a little bit about that patient. So when somebody says, hey, I noticed 2 years ago they had a ureteroscopy with low-grade disease and now you're taking their kidney out, what changed? Can you help me understand that? Seeing that longitudinal understanding and ownership, not just reading about the surgery, but reading about that patient, because that's what medicine is all about, is not just being able to spew, this is what the surgery is, these are the indications, but that particular patient, you took that extra step. So I think going the extra mile. And then I think the other aspect is teamwork, and this is behind the scenes as well to a great degree. So we as residents and faculty members see a lot of the teamwork, but I'll tell you what, we get feedback from folks that you may not even think about, and it is so critical to us to know. I think especially in urology, we're a very collaborative collegial field, and knowing that a potential applicant or resident is a team player is huge. So helping the nurses in the OR or in the clinic, really trying to be as helpful to them as you can and be a team player, it gets back to the people who are evaluating you and making decisions about whether you're a good fit for the program. And that's true for the residents too. The residents value your input. They value you as the team member. And you really can, not just for your own performance, but you really can make a big difference on the resident team.
Absolutely agree. Okay, Dr. Kieran, how many sub-internship experiences should I pursue?
All right, I think this is working. So in terms of sub-internships, I think there's a few ways to think about this. I think that the temptation is to do as many as possible. And, certainly within any sub-internship, there are experiences you should have and you should avail yourself of all of those. But in terms of where, how many rotations should you do? How many places should you go? I think that really depends on your goals and realistically, what can you do and what can you do well? So I think, when I was a medical student, it was one, and you did one, and that was it, and you kind of moved on, and, I was a med student a long time ago, right, Erica? we were together. But now I think there's a pressure to go to multiple places. I would ask people where they think you should go based on your clinical interest, understanding that those will evolve over time. But if you're someone who really wants to graduate from residency and be an NIH-funded researcher, you probably shouldn't go to a community program. Or maybe you shouldn't just go to a community program. Conversely, if you would like to do rural practice in a really urban program, might not be the one for you. So I would think about the different facets of what you anticipate your career being, understanding that it's early and how each of those might help you achieve those goals. I really want to caution you against so-and-so said I should look at this program and I should go there. Because while that is really well intended, you have to think really critically about your goals and your interests to see where you should go. So I would put the number at maybe 2 for most people, possibly 3. I will also say I understand that it is not feasible, from a financial perspective or a time perspective from a lot of people to do multiple sub-internships. If you can't do it, you can't do it well, do not do it. Because to Dr. Yates's point, I don't want to sound negative, but if you can't do it well, this will hurt you. It's a small field and things get around. So I really just want to say, doing less, but doing it in a really excellent manner will really behoove you.
Wonderful advice. And then also, I think there is some concern that if you do too many, it looks like you're hoarding the sub-internship experience. So just be mindful of that. And then let's go over here to our resident team. How do you select a sub-internship? And we'll start out with Dr. Siddiqui and then go to Dr. Reddy.
Yeah, so You know, I think your best resource in terms of selecting where you should go. I totally agree with what she just said about look at what your goals are. I think that's very important because I think every program is a little different, and some are stronger in some areas than others. But talk to your mentors. I think when I was going through this process 6 years ago now. I talked to my mentors. I sat down with them, and they kind of helped me figure out where I should go. I think some people have, they're trying to couples match, or they want to be in a certain geographical location, and if you don't have ties to that area, then sometimes it just helps, not just show them that hey, I'm interested in a certain region, but also go in and you are evaluating the program as much as they're evaluating you, because you need to make sure it's a good fit for you. And so I would say look at what your goals are, talk to your mentors, and I think they're pretty good. I think in my experience, all the mentors have been really good about being honest with because they know you more than anyone else, and they'll guide you where you should go and how you should approach it. And one thing I would add is a lot of programs, I see it now that they have scholarships. So if it is financially difficult to travel to find I'm in Chicago, and subletting a place for a month is very expensive. So some programs have scholarships and some funding available for students coming in for sub-I. So look into that as well.
Yeah, I echo a lot of those. We have 20 residents at our program, and I tell all the students, between all of us, we've probably each done 2 AUAs. So that's 80 programs, obviously with some overlap. But you'd be surprised. It's such a small community. Residents know so many residents and at other programs, and they can give you the inside track about making that connection, so you can talk to a resident in that program and learn more about it. So definitely tap into that resource. The other thing I will say is, and I think it's important to remember, is the places you're going to do a sub-I typically are programs that you're going to be very interested in and have a high chance of matching versus compared to at your home program and your ways. So do it with the right intention. Do it at a program that you're not doing it because you want a big letter from their chairman or something like that. I think it's very important because that's the places that you're going to more than likely have a good chance of matching. And so you need to consider all the things, your family. I think location is really important. So definitely keep that in mind as well, because it's a long 5 or 6 years, and you want to enjoy where you live and have a strong support system. So,
very great advice. And
Sorry,
Dr. Kieran, what do you think about geographical ties? Do you need to go and do a sub-I just to prove you're interested in an area?
All right, this is actually one of my favorite questions. Full disclosure, I am from Boston. I did my residency in Michigan. So I am a full believer that you do not need to have geographic ties to an area to match in a training program or have interest in a training program. That said, other people do believe that. And so I think that, to the points that have been made earlier, as program directors, as co-residents, we want the people that are coming in to be happy and to feel like they enjoy where they live, they have a life outside of work. If you live somewhere that, you really like skiing, but you match in Louisiana, it's going to be tough because it's just not available to you. So I do think that it is worth conveying in your interviews that you're interested in programs for what they have to offer, and that because of that you are not geographically bound. I think it is very worthwhile to be honest with yourself about geographic considerations and weather considerations, because I don't think we think about that very much. And if you're somebody who, gets depressed when it's dark out, somewhere like Seattle, might not be great for you in the winter. And truly being honest about that. But do I think that you need to then seek out a place to do a sub-I there? I personally don't. I don't know if other people have felt pressure to do that. As a program director, I don't take that into consideration.
And if I could just add, you do have other mechanisms in place these days to indicate your interest in an area, even if you look at your CV and your entire upbringing and education thus far, you've been in the Midwest, and you worry, gosh, how would I convince a program on the coast that I'm genuinely interested? We have other systems in place now like preference signals or the addition to the ERAS application of being able to throw in there some geographic signaling. And so don't feel like the sub-internship is the only mechanism by which you could demonstrate some sort of geographic interest or flexibility.
That was not me.
Sorry, can I add one more thing? I would also suggest that don't get caught up in the rankings, Doximity ranking, US News ranking. I think it's totally irrelevant now that I've gone through this process. I would just recommend, look at what you want, what are you looking for, and make a decision based on that.
Excellent, Dr. Siddiqui, and that is the truth. I'm going to tell all of you, all of the urology programs that are in the country and probably beyond, but in the U.S., they are fantastic programs. You are going to get an excellent training. The rankings are a little fake. I hope my boss didn't hear that. But I think it's really important for you all to recognize that. You're going to get a great education no matter what program you go to, because urology is really well, I think, overseen. We really have a tight kind of RC. There's a lot of infrastructure to make sure you're going to be a fantastic urologist. So excellent point. And just briefly, I'm going to ask Dr. Traxel to comment on if someone doesn't have a home urology program, because there are some resources we'd like to highlight.
Yeah, that's a great question. So based upon last year's applicants, so just putting in a plug right now, whenever you submit your rank list, you are given the opportunity to complete a survey asking, admittedly, it's a pretty lengthy survey, but we really are trying to dig into the experience of each year of applicants. So this last year, we did ask the question of everyone who was applying and submitting a rank list, do you have a home urology program? Because I know oftentimes people feel like it's an uphill battle for them. First of all, just to let you know, you're in good company. This last year, 29% of all individuals submitting a rank list identified as not having a home urology program. So don't feel like you're a unicorn or an orphan all by yourself if you're one of those individuals. And as a consequence, a lot of organizations and institutions have really tried to open their doors, if you will, to extend opportunities to those individuals who don't have home urology programs. So I'm just going to call out a few. Michigan Urology Academy, every year they put on a virtual course where they invite some interested students to participate, who explicitly, they say, we're looking for people who don't have home urology programs to participate. Other organizations like Urology Unbound, Uriter, Society of Women in Urology, they have very well-designed and intentional mentorship programs to try to help provide guidance to those individuals who might feel marginalized if they don't have those opportunities at their home institution. So those do exist.
Excellent. And there are a lot of different resources that we try to link for our medical student education page, so make sure to check that out. And we also have some webinars to help, so make sure to look at the YouTube channel. And I also want to highlight the Future program for anyone that is thinking about doing that next year. It's a great opportunity. I've loved meeting my mentees, and it's an opportunity to network as well and get new ideas. So moving on to research.
Marissa, can I make a quick comment about people without home programs?
Yes.
You can also reach out to your state urology society, reach out to people that are at programs that you wish to potentially attend. I think that we are all a really friendly group, and I know a couple of medical students. I won't call you out, but I see you out there who I know have really been out there and kind of on people's doorstep, and I think that really helps because doing your own networking is really valuable.
And one other comment is a program who is matched and is thrilled to have a couple of residents from programs that don't have their own program. Look at the Alumni Association at your institution. You may not be the first one, maybe not in the last year or two, so you may not have overlapped. But they can be your best advocates, those who have successfully already applied and matched into urology from your institution, and they can give you some guidance, some tips, and help you network as well.
These are some great resources. And so also make sure afterwards to stay at the mingle and ask these questions if you have specific questions. I'm going to highlight these team members that know all of the details. So I'm going to have Dr. Kieran, as we move to the research topic, can you explain a little bit about how residency programs evaluate research productivity?
Sure. So research productivity, I think this is a real source of stress for medical students. And what we are looking for, I think I speak for most program directors, is that we're looking for genuine involvement, an understanding of research, and an ability to talk about your project in a way that shows that you understand what you did and what the impact of it is. So you don't need 17 first author publications in the Lancet and New England Journal. You know, I don't have that. Somebody probably does. Conversely, if you only have a couple of things where you're 17th author, you're probably not really well involved. So what I'm looking for is something where somebody has had a project where they were clearly involved, they had a hypothesis that was based on a question, they did some planning, they created a project, they did the project, saw it through to completion, and presented it, because that's research, is dissemination of information, and ideally had a manuscript. Now, I realize that at every step in the way, there's barriers, but what I want is something where somebody can talk about the project they did and not be saying something like, I was plugged into so-and-so's lab and did some pipetting every other Thursday. So meaningful involvement is really important. It doesn't have to be multiple manuscripts, but we do want to see that you are actually engaged in the projects.
Okay, and then I want to ask our resident colleagues, Dr. Siddiqui, can you maybe talk a little bit about research productivity and how you've potentially mentored some of the medical students who asked that question?
Yes, you know, I come from a 6-year program, so I've been lucky that I had a dedicated year of research and spent time with multiple med students. And, you know, now that I'm 2 years out of my research year, you know, I've had some med students now match into urology, which is very rewarding. So I think what, like I said, like, you know, it was just mentioned, number of manuscripts, I don't think is that important. I think it's important to understand the methods, how it's done. My goal was always to, you know, not just hand stats directly to the med student and tell them, hey, just write a paper and I'll review it and we'll just submit it. I think, you know, my goal was always, you know, let's sit down, let's learn how to do data, how to code in data. Let's watch these videos. That's how I learned it, and this is what I want. I want you to learn how to catch a fish, not just like eat a fish, you know, whatever the phrase is. So productivity, I mean, it's nice when you have a manuscript, it's nice when you have an abstract. There are many ways of getting your name out there. You know, AUA is obviously one. It's a competitive, you know, all understand that's a competitive conference, but, you know, you also have, like when I went to med school in Madison, Wisconsin, and, you know, we had a local state urologic society, and people, you know, we would present at the conference there, and so, you know, smaller conference, there's, you know, the smaller AUA, you know, like North Central and whatever your school belongs in or your PI belongs in, you can present there. So there are many ways of, you know, getting that experience. So I think it's way important to get the experience. It's important to get your name out, but, you know, learning the process I think is way more important because that's what's going to help you when you're busy in residency. You're not going to have time to like learn I mean, you'll make time, but it will make your life a lot easier if you know how to do it versus like just, you know, someone just gave you the data set.
Excellent. And Dr. Traxel, does it matter if you do research in a different specialty?
This is a great question. So every year we review applications, and it's clear that someone was originally passionate about, say, cardiothoracic surgery or orthopedic surgery because they were previously the president of the orthopedic student interest group and, you know, participated in multiple research projects in that field before seeing the light and coming to urology. And so I think, as has been mentioned here, you know, when we see evidence that someone has participated in research, even if it's not urology, that demonstrates that there's, you could say, an extra dimension and an extra enthusiasm and energy within that individual. I would say the one potential downside to having done a lot of research in another field and then maybe realized at a later date than others, oh, I want to pursue urology, is we are urologists. We know how to talk about urology. And so it might make it a little more challenging when it comes to the interview phase because a urologist is not really going to understand the ins and outs perhaps of CT surgery research. But as far as just the initial, how does that show up on your CV, I think it's still extremely impressive, even if it's in a different area. And then if I could also just add for a quick second, you could say personal bias. In the era of holistic application review, I think that people, urology, those of us who contribute to the field, do so in so many different ways. There's actually very few people out in practice who are actually the high-powered research powerhouses, right? And we recognize that everyone brings something different to the table. So perhaps you have a background in advocacy, a lot of active community service. Perhaps you have participated in medical mission work. Don't feel like, gosh, I don't have anything to show much in the way of research on my CV, therefore I need to do an extra year within medical school of doing research in order to prepare myself to apply for a residency, because I don't believe that to be true. Thanks.
Excellent point. And just so the audience knows, I had 0 publications before I matched, and I did okay. Okay, Dr. Yates, I discovered urology late in medical school. How can I publish efficiently and effectively in the field before I interview?
Thank you, Dr. Clifton. I think that Dr. Traxel helped to answer that as far as just how critical it is in that whole scheme of what we're looking at when we're evaluating resident or applicants for residency. And kind of the diversity of your portfolio, so to speak, is a lot more critical to us than how many publications you have. If you have publications in other specialties, one way perhaps to kind of capitalize on that, because as Dr. Traxel mentioned, it's difficult for us to ask questions about your research in dermatology or something along those lines, have your letter writer consider reaching out to somebody who is a research mentor to you. Get a little quote to put into your letter of recommendation that says, I worked with this medical student and the attributes that they exhibited during their research time with me were as follows. So you are still, without us having to truly understand the medicine of what you studied, we can still get at what we wanted to learn about you, which is the dedication, the commitment, the following through. I think you mentioned that originally is a 15 abstracts with no papers isn't necessarily that impressive. It makes us wonder, is there going to be that follow through? So your research mentor, even if in another specialty, can still be a big ally and asset to you in your application, even though traditionally we don't have them write a letter of recommendation, but their input could be brought in. And then networking within your institution, if you feel strongly that you need late in the game to get some research, but it can be rather transparent when we see somebody checking a box simply because they realize late in the game. I have a lot of respect for personal statements that say, I realized when I did my rotation, and by then I had already committed to something else in my mind and my heart changed. I have a lot of respect for that. So I think rather than checking a box, being honest, genuine, committed to what you're committed to and following through is a lot more important to us.
Can I just make a quick comment? I think the common theme for sure is, it's all about quality over quantity. And one of my mentors always said, if you're going to put anything on your CV, you should be able to talk about it in a very coherent and cogent way. So, just think about that whenever you're, like the other panelists has mentioned, if you have a project where you're the 17th author, plus or minus on if that's really going to get you to that residency spot. So just think about those things because, people do take that into account because it kind of just shows, how authentic you are as an applicant as well. And the other thing I'll say is I think finding the right mentor for research is very important. I was fortunate where I went to medical school. I found a mentor who was, very prolific and had a history of working with students and helping them get into, urology residency. So ask around, ask your residents, ask other faculty members, who does a lot of research and who's looking for help. I promise there's always someone who's looking for research help. I think the tough part as a medical student is finding out who does the research and who needs help. So that's where you just have to ask around and, never be afraid to send an email. The worst thing someone can say is no, right? So never be afraid to take that first step.
And if I can add something to that as well, talk to the residents if you have a program at home. Residents always have some stuff that's been pending for a while. So, you can help finish that, and that way you can get your name kind of high up on the list. Case reports are a good, easy way to publish something quick. You can help. There's always some, attendings get a lot of emails about review articles, book chapters. So those would be some concrete, easy ways that you can work from home and you have free time to, put something together.
These are some really great points, and I'm going to add, you need to look at your specialty societies. SMSNA has opportunities, SWU has opportunities. I'm sure all of the subspecialty organizations have opportunities, and also grant applications. And they're not too laborious, and you can potentially get it. The second point is I've had some medical students come up to me with an idea and basically write the whole paper and then say, hey, you want to join? And I'm like, thank you for helping my promotion. Absolutely, you're wonderful. So also, if you make it easier for your mentors to publish something, and let's not forget the AUA has some opportunities. We have some great opportunities for AUA news potentially, and we have a new open access journal called Journal of Urology Open Plus. It is a little bit more diverse in what it calls research, and so if you come up with an idea and submit it there, there's a chance that that's going to get published. So think outside the box when you think about research when you have a short timeline.
Sorry, can I add one more thing? Also look into those one-year research programs. I feel like I'm the king of taking time off. That's what my mom tells me, because I took a research year in med school. I did research after undergrad. I did a 6-year residency. So, look into, I know NIH has a program, HHMI, which takes a little more planning, but there are research opportunities out there. And honestly, it gives you really, it gives you time to reflect. It gives you time to really consolidate your interest in the field.
I'll just be a devil's advocate to that and say you don't have to do that. We have a long journey as it is to get to where we need to go, and I think it's a great opportunity to do that. And I definitely think for someone, if you feel like you need that extra research support, but you can definitely do it within the time constraints of medical school. You just have to kind of be a little more organized, and it's challenging, but it's very much doable.
I agree with that.
Excellent. And so moving on to letters of recommendation, I'm going to ask Dr. Kieran, how are the letters of recommendation constructed?
So these are very variable. I think that there is a big push in multiple specialties to have very standardized letters of reference. That has not, in urology, some of those have been published. That is by no means universal. What that means is that there is often some coded language, and we have to look at those as program directors and say, what is this person saying? Like if Dr. Traxel says this, then she says they're really good. Like her bar might be super high, so this person might be excellent, but somebody else might say this person's really good and they think everyone's outstanding, so this person's below average. So again, this goes back, the reason I'm mentioning this is that you have no control over this. In an ideal world, you will never see this letter. So you have to be very thoughtful about who you ask to write your letters, and I think we'll get to that, because you want your best assets and what you have to offer our field and particular programs to show up in that letter. So what I would encourage you to do is sit down, talk to your prospective letter writers, tell them what you would like in the letter, what you think your best assets are, give them a copy of your CV, but also, and many people will do this if you ask, get a copy of letters, that they've written for other people. They'll give it to you often with information redacted. And you can actually see what people write for letters, because, if they write kind of a general form letter that I worked with so-and-so and they're really outstanding, you don't want that person. I want to ask people if they can write you an outstanding letter, and then you want to follow through with information that helps them do that. So I think, again, being proactive and being your own, best advocate is really valuable.
Dr. Kieran, I think one of your last comments was one of the most pertinent here, and I think you had said these exact words last year at this forum is, ask your letter writer if they can write you. How did you say it, doctor? Because you said it so eloquently a year ago.
A very strong letter of recommendation or an exceptional letter of recommendation. You want to get a sense of if they're going to write you it gives you a way out. Be gracious if they say, well, I don't know you quite that well, I'll write you a letter. But if you get that sense, walk away, say thank you for your time, I really appreciate your honesty. Find that exceptional letter writer.
Can I add something to the letter recommendation? Also kind of goes back to how to shine on your sub-I. At least at our institution, we have our sub-Is give grand rounds towards the end, and I think the ones that I visited, I also gave a little talk. Spend some time on that talk as well. Start thinking about it early, because you have 4 weeks flies by, and you don't want to put something together at the very last minute. So be thoughtful about it, because it does reflect in your recommendation letter actually, because I've seen that in letters. I'm sure you all have way more experience than I do, but I think that's very important. It's a bit of a overlooked aspect of your sub-I.
And I'll just say, regarding, again, the authenticity of a letter, I think it's sometimes easy to be like, I want to get a letter from the biggest name in the department who you may have worked with in one clinic. But I think if you get a letter from someone who knows you very well, who knows your background, who knows your story, and can articulate that in a letter, and almost sort of tell a story about you as an applicant and why you're special, I think that goes a long, long way when when we're interviewing applicants and get to read about them, because it kind of paints a picture for us of who you are. So don't, look for someone who knows you and knows you well. It doesn't have to be the biggest name, because I think that's what we look out for more.
And I think you can rest assured that Dr. Traxel and the rest of the SAU team are working very hard to make this better for you and make it better for the letter writers. This question about standardization it's a hotly debated, discussed topic. So there is active work behind the scenes going on to make this better for you. So I think right now we're in a little bit of a flux as far as how many people use a standardized template versus not. But I think eventually we're going to transition, and we're working. Everyone's aware of it and working very hard to make for a good solution.
Okay, Dr. Traxel, can I ask someone outside of urology to write my letter of rec?
The short answer is yes, you absolutely can, but there's, I could say, a lot of qualifiers that go behind that yes. And what I mean is, firstly, urology, it's a small field. We know each other. And so if I read an amazing letter of recommendation from somebody whom I personally know, and I think, wow, this individual, they would not have said this if they weren't willing to put their money where their mouth is, and they absolutely believe in this applicant. Outside of urology, I don't know a lot of people. And so sure, it might be a glowing letter of recommendation, but as far as what that means, can I actually believe those words? It's a little harder when it's someone who's outside of urology. Now, I would say there are certain exceptions. For instance, if you did do a year of basic science research and you worked with somebody outside of urology, but your PI, they worked alongside you in that year, and they have so many amazing things to say about your dedication and your follow-through, I think that can be a very impactful letter.
And as a recovering former program director, I just have to say that the language we use in urology is very effusive, and some of the other specialties don't use the same adjectives and sparkles. And so even though it's an excellent letter according to how they write letters for their field, it may not come across the way that we write it. There is a certain parlance that we use. So just be aware. But that being said, if you have research mentors that can comment specifically about that, that's incredibly beneficial to your application.
I also would like to mention that you can ask your letter writer to put a quote in. We do that at UMass. The medical students have longitudinal mentors that are not urologists and maybe an internal medicine doctor. They know them a lot better than I do. So I will reach out to them at the letter writing time and say, can you give me a little quote about this? You know this medical student well. So you kind of get the best of all worlds, and that you're getting your urology letter, but with a little bit of input from other specialists who may know you very well, research or otherwise.
I love that idea about homework. And I'm going to ask Dr. Reddy, we talked a little bit about getting a strong letter of recommendation. Do you have any other bonus points that our audience can gain?
I mean, I think for sure, like everyone said, you have to know your letter writer well, and I think you can be very transparent with them, and again, ask them, do you think you can evaluate me honestly and give me a strong letter? And I think that's where you kind of have to go the extra mile yourself. So doing research with that person, spending time in clinic with them, getting to know them on a personal level. Like this is someone who's doing the job that you hope to do one day, and I think developing that connection on a personal level, it goes a long way both ways, because I think they know you better, and I think because of that, they can write a more articulate letter about you. And I think for you, I think you develop a mentorship connection there that I think will allow that will kind of precede a strong letter. So definitely spending time outside, and part of that is kind of being proactive and taking the onus on yourself to find those mentors that you are hoping to get a letter from in the future, and planning for that.
Yeah, and just to close, I think it's asking people, like residents, who writes good letters. They have a sense of who writes good letters and who doesn't. So if you're at a sub-I, ask early so you get that letter started and you spend some time with the person who's going to write that letter, number one. Number two, we are all very, very busy. So what I do is I actually write out a list of about 10 questions of how I could help support the applicant's application. So I have very different questions that I ask to try to put a spin on the content that I am going to put in their letter. You don't want every letter to be exactly the same. And if you give particular guidance to your letter writer, it can be very helpful. I like that because I'm able to augment something outside of their personal statement, something that maybe no one knows about them. It really engages someone to read my letter. And then I have those standard questions so I can do it for all of the people that come through. So if you create a list of what questions or things you want to highlight, write some blurbs, it makes our job a whole lot easier. And then you're more likely to get that follow through in a shorter period of time. So just think about the ways that you can make it easier for your letter writers, and they're going to say, this person is prepared, and that actually helps your letter. So just a couple of points there.
I'll just make a last plug that, to that point, ask early and ask often in the sense of sending reminders because, my program director, Dr. Mayer, is in the audience, but he wears a lot of different hats and we're all very busy. And I think that, it's okay to send reminders because you want the letters to get in on time. And so it's totally okay to send a text message and just say, hey, it's due in 2 weeks or 3 weeks. I think it's very reasonable because you definitely want those letters in on time.
I'm going to push back a little on that. I hate the reminders. Give me a deadline and, find someone who will write your letter that will adhere to the deadline. You should not be coming to us at the last minute, and we should not be writing your letters at the last minute. But I'll be honest, I hate when people text me and they're like, hey, I just want to remind you about my letter. I'm like, yeah, I know. So I think if you know people well, you can do that, but I would proceed with caution because some people like me are really triggered by text messages. So, you don't want to make your letter writer, maybe angry when they're writing your letter or like not in the best mood, truly.
Definitely don't message them every day, for sure.
So there's also a really nice way to do a reminder where you talk about a really cool success. I have a wonderful medical student, and she said, I went to this conference and I learned this thing that we talked about, and I just published this article, and I know you're writing my letter and it's coming up, so I just want to add this in as a piece of information just because I really appreciate you. You're so great. You're a wonderful mentor. If you make it full of sweetness, I love reading those. And then I'm like, oh, so for everyone that's like Dr. Kieran, you may have someone that gets behind a little bit, and a gentle, informative, not pushy, probably not a text message, but an email is a little bit more appropriate. You can actually gently navigate that, and I've seen some really great people do that. So there's a way to do it. So think about the soft side of medicine. Okay, moving to signals, we are very lucky to have Dr. Traxel here from the SAU to talk about signals. I do have to put a caveat that most of us have not matched with signals. This is relatively new, but the PDs use it in different ways, so I'm going to rely heavily on them. I'm going to ask Dr. Traxel, are there any changes to the signal process this year?
The short answer is no, relative to what it was last year, right? But last year was different than the year before. But the SAU does plan to maintain consistency in this year's signaling program relative to last year, meaning each applicant has the opportunity to submit 30 equally weighted preference signals to a program that you are genuinely interested in. Originally, it was 5 per applicant, which I think was a good place to start, but we realized that perhaps if we opened it up a bit more, we expanded opportunities to applicants, and then it also helped to be more informative to the programs. And we did analyze, if you will, trying to understand the impact that having 30 preference signals had upon the match ecosystem, if you will, this year. We might get to this in a little bit as far as the number of applications per applicant. But what we found was this year, the typical applicant applied to 66 programs, whereas the year before, on average, they applied to 88 programs. But what we found was this year, the number of interviews offered to each individual applicant on average remained pretty consistent at 14. And so it seemed that expanding the preference signal system to a total of 30 did not, if you will, harm the applicants in terms of the number of places that they would be invited to interview. So we plan to keep it the same this year.
Great. And Dr. Kieran, how do I best utilize my signals?
Understand that the signals are going to tell that program that they're one of your favorites. And you get 30 of them, which is a lot, right? I would suggest thinking about if this is really just saying, I want you to pick me. So use them carefully. Think about, do you want to put them for your REACH programs? Do you want to put them for the programs that you think are the best fit truly for you, that you're most likely to match at? Do you want to use them for your programs that are kind of more of a quote unquote safety program? I would say personally, I advise people use a few of them for the REACH programs, probably 5 or 6, 20% of them, and then there's a big chunk that you can use for programs that really meet your needs and your goals in other ways. I also will say, even though there are 30 signals, you don't need to use all 30 signals. And at some point, I do think that kind of just throwing them out dilutes things a little bit. They become a little less meaningful. So I wouldn't send it to a program in which you don't have a genuine interest, or you wouldn't kind of drop everything to go to that interview. That is just me. I would love to hear from others if they feel more strongly that you should use them all, but I think they're kind of a gift to let people at the program know, I really value your program, and I would drop everything and come to this interview and try to match there.
And Dr. Traxel, do we have to signal our home program in a ways this year?
So you're never required to use a signal in your home program or on and away. That being said, the way in which preference signals were originally constructed, when there were only 5 per applicant, we did tell individuals, don't use those 5 preference signals on your home program or on a place where you did an away rotation. The purpose of the preference signal was to demonstrate tangibly genuine, authentic interest in a program. And we felt that being at your home program or an away rotation was genuine interest enough. That being said, once it was expanded to 30, you could say it's a little more ambiguous in the sense that we don't tell people, oh, you have to use now a preference signal on your home program or on an away rotation. That being said, you don't know how that program might interpret it if you don't send them a preference signal. Now, perhaps you could have just a genuine conversation with them at the end of your away rotation and find out. I have heard stories of some program directors who were very explicit about it and will tell an individual, listen, if you don't give us a preference signal, I will consider that as a sign that you are not interested in us and must have had a bad away rotation with us. And so you might be able to find out from the program how they would interpret that. That being said, we don't have any official guidance on you have to or you don't have to use a preference signal on your home institution or an away rotation.
Thank you for clarifying. Okay, and Dr. Yates, can you tell me how programs will they consider your application if you don't signal?
Sure. I think I can answer that pretty quickly. I don't think it's binary. I think it's a gray zone, and every program's going to handle this differently. I believe there was an abstract presented at this meeting that suggests that signaling does increase your risk of getting an interview at a program, which is what we all expected and hoped was signaling. So I don't think there's a straightforward answer, but I think I would lean, if I were pinned to a wall, I would say the answer is they probably will not consider you very strongly, since we now have 30 signals. Last year was different, or year before last was different. So I would say strongly in the camp of probably will not get an interview.
And this question is actually a little bit new this year, and so I'm going to ask Dr. Traxel about urology residencies and the geographic signaling. What do you think?
So I would say the jury is still out, if you will. You know, we don't necessarily have data as to how did that directly impact people's invitation to interview or likelihood to match at a program. That being said, historically, we do know that there's a pretty strong correlation between where someone is either already located in medical school or where they identify as being from and where they end up matching. Now, that being said, that's not necessarily in terms of the results of the match just in the hands of the program, right? Obviously, the applicants themselves and the way in which the match is constructed, it's actually weighted in the favor of the applicants. And so a lot of times we find maybe the applicant wants to be someplace where it's closer to home. And so all that to say, I think the ERAS geographic preference signaling really just kind of more cemented what was already in existence. I think that's my interpretation.
Great. Okay, moving on to match, and I'm going to ask Dr. Reddy, how can I learn more about specific programs?
So I think I touched on this earlier. Definitely talking to the residents in your program. Like I said, there's definitely connections there. The other thing I'll say is look at the alumni networks. You'd be surprised at where your faculty have trained at your own home program. They will have a lot of connections as well. Obviously, the programs have their own specific department websites where I think you can get an overview. But I feel like the most kind of transparent way you can learn about a program is to really talk to people that have been involved in that program, as a old faculty member, as a graduate. So that would be my advice.
And then Dr. Kieran, do you think the open house is a good option potentially, or what do you think about all the virtual options?
Yeah, I love the open house. I think it's a great way to meet your future colleagues, your other medical students who are coming to match, and also selected faculty, understanding that not everyone's going to be able to come to the open house. I know any open house, just like any interview day, it's going to be a curated vision of the program. But I think that most programs, and you guys can probably speak to this better, but most programs are pretty open, no pun intended, at the open house about what they offer, what the culture is like. There's usually time to talk to the residents at this. I think the residents are a great resource, and they're very honest about things that are great, things that could use improvement, whether the program is responsive to things that could use improvement, et cetera. I think it's a great tool. I don't think it should be your only tool, but I think it is something that you should really make time to attend. They're usually only about an hour or so.
And Dr. Yates, how many programs should applicants apply to?
Well, I think this is a moving target, and I think the goal was, with signaling, is to decrease the number of programs that people are applying to and kind of increase the quality of the application process rather than it being similar to research based on sheer quantity. So there's no correct answer to this, but the one piece of advice I would give you is do not apply to a program that you would not be happy to match with. So increasing the sheer number of programs you're applying to, if you have no intention of going there, it's not worth your time, your effort, your finances, and also it kind of undermines the whole process. So that would be my suggestion.
This is a loaded question, and I think I'm going to ask Dr. Traxel, how will Step 1 pass-fail scoring affect the application? Because that was a relatively recent change that we've started to see happen.
I mean, it's kind of what was one of the factors that really has pushed to the forefront this concept of holistic application review. And it was just one of many, you could say, historic, what was thought to be objective, but yet honestly studies have shown perhaps not so objective because there's a lot of bias in these standardized tests, a lot of bias in coursework at medical schools when it came to stratification of grades for different coursework. So all that to say, a lot of people have a lot of opinions about Step 1 going pass-fail, but I think it was part of an overall movement that is very much a step in the right direction. I think you could say almost logically, or not coincidentally at least, I think Step 2 has become now a little bit more at the forefront of applications than what it was historically. For instance, this last year, it was, I think 95% of applicants indicated on that survey that they had submitted a Step 2 score within their application, which I was really surprised to see what an overwhelming majority that was. Now, the other part of me thinks to myself, the WISE program will have learned the lesson that Step 1 going pass-fail was probably in some respects for a really good reason. And so rather than them now building their application vetting process around Step 2 scores, they should perhaps learn a lesson and say, well, let's not build now our review process around a Step 2 score and hanging on to a number, but instead invest in holistic application review. So I think the majority of applicants are submitting it, but I don't think it necessarily, that Step 2 score has the same impact that many moons ago, or maybe not so many moons ago, the Step 1 score, the impact that it had.
I think that's a great answer. I would say, although some people are more progressive with the holistic application review, not every program is. And I would strongly recommend people doing a Step 2 and having a score in their file. That is something that I think at this point we really need to consider. It's not everything, but I do think it is important. If you just have a pass-fail, that may kind of screen you out. So I want to ask
Sorry,
Dr.
Can I add something quick to that Step 2 thing? You know, scores are actually not that. I totally agree with. At Northwestern, I'll tell you, when I was applying, I was very scared, just the name of the program. But now that I'm in it, the scores are actually not that important. It's the whole package that you bring to the table. And then I think if you do it poorly, it's going to hurt you. But I think if like in the middle, it's just what it is.
So Dr. Reddy, should I have a secondary plan? And what secondary plans are often pursued in students that don't match? And you touched on that earlier.
Yeah, I think, obviously, look, urology is very competitive and it's becoming, more and more competitive. And I think that's good. It shows that there's a lot of interest and the field is growing. I never, in terms of a secondary plan, I know there are some applicants in the past who have considered dual applying to other specialties. I wouldn't say that's too common. But I think that's where the research years have now, I think, taken kind of a front seat in terms of a good way to get involved in the field, show your interest and show your dedication. And I think there's many programs. We have one at Baylor as well, where you can pursue like a research initiative with a research mentor and get strong letters that way. But I think those are usually the two avenues that people choose to take in terms of secondary plans.
Any additions from the panel of program directors and leadership?
I think a lot of us don't want to talk about this, and it's kind of an awkward conversation, but the majority of us here are type A's, and we like to be prepared for every outcome. So if your mentor says, let's talk about a plan B, it doesn't mean that they think you're not going to match, because that's a sensitive conversation, but it's always good to at least think about it. The absolute worst time to have this conversation and thought process going through your head is in that emotional moment where you don't match. You don't want to start thinking about your next steps. You want to have if this, then that laid out in front of you so that you're not having an emotional storm while you're making life decisions. So think about it, talk about it, flesh out a plan, but the majority of applicants thankfully don't need that.
And I'll also say that you should always have a second plan. I mean, you're driving to work, you should have another way to get to work. I mean, we are all people who have backup plans, and even if on paper you're the strongest applicant, you may not match. And if that is just the reality of things. And I just want to be clear, because not matching it is not a reflection of your value as a person or as a student or as a future urologist. I mean, there are amazing urologists who did not match the first time they applied. And, the match is, to some degree, it's chance. It's a match. And you need to have secondary plans in place for everything you do in your career. So, as Dr. Traxel said earlier, chance favors the prepared. Be prepared. Think about this. Think about, do you want to do research? Do you want to try to soap? What do you want to do? And hopefully you won't need to use that, but I think that, again, the worst time to make that decision is sort of in the heat of the moment.
And I'll just add, this is where I think you can tap into the experience of your program directors at your own program and just have an honest conversation. Where I went to med school, every applicant, every medical student had a meeting with our dean and that department chair to discuss just approving them, to just giving them honest opinion about their rates, chances of matching into that specialty. And so I think it's totally reasonable to have, if you're concerned, to have an honest discussion with someone, all of the wonderful program directors out there who are, very experienced and have done this for many years.
I will say stay positive, be confident, but not overconfident, and just be your genuine self. I think that's what the programs are looking for. You don't want to put up a front because people can see through that really easily.
Excellent answers. And Dr. Traxel, because you are SAU representative, do you mind hitting on these few questions about the application cycle this year?
Yeah, so will interviews be virtual? TBD, meaning it has not yet been determined. Again, going back to the surveys that we collected both from last year's applicants as well as program directors following submission of their rank lists, we do know that about 57% of the applicants did feel that virtual interviews enhanced equity within the process, and even more so, almost 70% of program directors felt that it did improve equity. Now, it's not a perfect process, and so many applicants as well as programs agree perhaps being able to have a genuine, authentic understanding and feel of the program, it is different when it's done virtually rather than an in-person process. And so we're still sorting through and trying to collect more information from our stakeholders so that we can then make a decision. That being said, we are committed, again, to maintaining, you could say, a level playing field, both for applicants as well as for the programs. And so we would encourage, once a decision is made, that it is upheld by all programs and applicants across the process, meaning we don't want it to be what some people have referred to as the Wild West, where there are some programs that are doing it one way, others that are doing it another, some programs that are doing a combination, some virtual, some in-person interviews, because that definitely injects a lot of uncertainty and inequity to the process. So you'll be the first to know once the decision is made. We will broadcast it widely.
And we're keeping the flush day, correct?
Everyone loved Flush Day. Applicants love Flush Day. Programs love Flush Day. We will definitely be keeping Flush Day. If anything, the name is great.
It is very appropriate. That is correct. And then does the SAU anticipate any changes that we need to know about?
I would say the biggest change to the timeline this year is the SAU. We heard very loud and clear that there is an appetite for us mimicking the NRMP match in terms of those programs that do not fill and those applicants who do not match, giving them advance notice before the actual match day if they did not match. And so when we're talking about those secondary plans, it gives people an opportunity to get geared up if they are one of those individuals who didn't match or one of those programs who didn't fill all of their spaces. So I would say that that's the biggest change that we anticipate for the timeline. But it is going to be, the whole thing from start to finish. Even though it's a marathon, it feels like a sprint when you're in the midst of this cycle. And so it's still a pretty tight timeline. And so it's probably inside of a week between when people will find out if they did not match and then the actual match day itself.
Well, thank you so much. And we're going to save our questions for the mingle. I just want to thank everybody. We actually stayed pretty close to time. We started a little bit late to make sure everyone could join us. Maggie and Jody, are we going to do the raffle right now? Okay, apparently there are tickets, and we are going to pull some tickets and winning some wonderful AUA prizes. I want to give a round of applause to all of our panelists, our faculty, our amazing residents, and I want to thank all of you for being here. Ask all of your really hard questions. As I tell everyone, this is Vegas rules. Whatever you want to ask, come find us, and we will answer as truthfully as possible, but please don't judge us for the answers. We want to just give you good information. Okay. I guess we're going to pull out some tickets.
Just read the last three.
So the last three digits are going to be 072. There we go. 108. 108. 112. Everyone left? 084. There we go. Excellent. 069. Oh, there we go. Another winner. 073. 077. 024. I want to do this raffle. This is great. 128. 121. 119. Look at that swag back there. Oh, so cool. Okay. 125. There we go. And 129. Am I close?
6 more.
6 more. 075. 075. 106. I lost count again. That's why Maggie's here. 074. 059. 115. Am I done?
2 more.
2 more, okay. 045. 045.
Last one.
This is the last one. 062. Excellent. Well, we're going to have you wear those proudly. Wonderful shirts. I actually really like the design on the shirt, so great job, Jody and Maggie. Okay, so let's all mingle, ask the questions. Thank you for being here. Don't forget, you can become a member of the AUA for free, and make sure to look at all of our educational programming. Your program directors, the residents want you to match. We want you to join us in this exciting, wonderful field. So please, please, please ask questions, and I look forward to seeing you as colleagues. Thanks, everyone.